David Sinclair's name was synonymous with wealth and power in New York City. A self-made billionaire, he had clawed his way to the top, leaving no room for mediocrity in his world. He lived a life of tailored suits, private jets, and exclusive galas, where his mere presence commanded attention. David was tall, impossibly handsome, and exuded confidence so effortlessly that people either envied him or wanted to be him. Yet, beneath the surface, David thrived not on money or fame but on competition. Every deal, every relationship, and every move he made was a game, one he played to win. Challenges fueled him, and victories were his currency. He was invincible, or so he thought, until a fateful evening at an extravagant gala changed everything. The gala was hosted by Ethan Carter, a longtime friend who delighted in stirring the pot. Ethan was charming and unpredictable, the type of man who found joy in disrupting the status quo. That evening, with champagne flowing and laughter echoing through the ballroom, Ethan approached David with a gleam of mischief in his eyes. "David," Ethan began, swirling his champagne lazily. "You think you're unbeatable, don't you?" David smirked, taking the bait. "I don't think, Ethan. I know." Ethan chuckled. "Then how about a bet? Something that'll really test you." David's curiosity was piqued. "I'm listening." "I bet you wouldn't have the guts to marry a woman who isn't your type," Ethan said, his grin widening. "I'm talking about someone who doesn't fit your model-perfect standards. Someone who challenges everything you stand for." David laughed, brushing off the idea. "That's absurd. Why would I do that?" "Because I'm putting $1 million on the line," Ethan replied, his tone sharp. "But there's a catch, you have to stay married to her for 6 months. No loopholes, no exceptions." The room fell silent as Ethan's words hung in the air. Guests began to murmur, their interest captured by the audacity of the wager. David, always composed, didn't flinch. His pride wouldn't let him walk away from such a public challenge. "Deal," David said, extending his hand. Ethan grinned as they shook hands, his satisfaction evident. "You'll meet her soon, David. Just remember, this isn't about love, it's about proving you can handle the unexpected." A few days later, Ethan arranged for David to meet Serena Blake, the woman who would become his wife. Ethan described her as intelligent, fiercely independent, and wholly uninterested in wealth or status. This intrigued David. He wasn't used to people who didn't care about money or power. The meeting took place at a high-end Manhattan restaurant, a place where the elite gathered to broker deals and flaunt their wealth. David arrived early, as always, exuding confidence. But when Serena entered, he was caught off guard. Serena wasn't like the women David usually dated. She was full-figured, with features that didn't conform to the glossy perfection of the supermodels David was accustomed to. Yet, there was an undeniable allure about her. She walked with confidence, her head held high, completely unfazed by the opulent surroundings or the man waiting for her. "You must be David Sinclair," Serena said as she sat down across from him, her voice calm and steady. "And you must be Serena Blake," David replied, extending his hand. Serena regarded him with a level gaze before shaking his hand, her grip firm. "Let's not waste time," she said bluntly. "I know about the bet. I know why we're here." David raised an eyebrow, impressed by her directness. "And yet, you agreed to this meeting. Why?" Serena leaned back in her chair, her expression neutral. "Let's just say I have my reasons. But don't think for a second that I'm going to be easy to deal with. You may think you're in control, David, but you're not." Her words threw him off balance. For the first time, David wasn't sure how to proceed. The wedding happened quickly, devoid of romance or sentiment. It was purely transactional, a means to fulfill the terms of the bet. David approached it like he did any business deal, with precision and detachment. Serena, on the other hand, treated it as a necessary step in her own agenda. That night, as they settled into David's sprawling penthouse, Serena made her position clear. 6 months, she said, her voice firm as she stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. That's how long this lasts. After that, we go our separate ways. David smirked, his confidence undeterred. Fine by me. Just don't get too comfortable. But it was David who found himself struggling to adapt. Serena wasn't like the women he was used to. She didn't swoon over his wealth, didn't care about his lifestyle, and refused to be controlled. Instead, she maintained her independence, living her life on her terms. David began testing her boundaries, trying to provoke a reaction. He cancelled her appointments, made offhand remarks about her weight, and even went so far as to invite his ex-girlfriends to their social events. But Serena didn't flinch. "You're predictable, David," she said one evening after he disrupted one of her work meetings. "You think you're playing a game, but you don't realize you're losing." Her words stung more than David cared to admit. As the weeks turned into months, David found himself drawn to Serena in ways he hadn't expected. Her confidence, her resilience, and her refusal to bend to his will intrigued him. For the first time, he began questioning his own values. One evening, David found Serena in the penthouse library, engrossed in a book. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated her face, and for a moment, he hesitated. "Good book?" he asked, breaking the silence. Serena looked up, her expression neutral. "It's about resilience. How people rebuild after loss." David tilted his head, curious. "Why that topic?" Serena closed the book, her fingers brushing the cover. "Because life doesn't always go as planned. Sometimes, you have to decide if it's worth putting the pieces back together." Her words lingered with David long after she left the room. Unbeknownst to David, Serena had her own reasons for agreeing to the bet. Years earlier, her family's business had been destroyed in a hostile takeover orchestrated by David's company. The fallout devastated her father, who eventually took his own life. Serena had entered the marriage not for money or status but to confront the man who had caused her family's ruin. Yet, as she spent more time with David, she found herself questioning her own motives. The arrogant tycoon she had imagined was more complex than she'd expected. Beneath his charm and bravado was a man grappling with the emptiness of his success. David began to change. Inspired by Serena's resilience and her unflinching honesty, he started to reevaluate his life. He reached out to people he had wronged, offering apologies and reparations. He donated to charities, restructured his company to prioritize ethical practices, and began supporting small businesses. Serena watched from a distance, her walls slowly crumbling. She saw David struggle, but she also saw him grow. The man she had once resented was transforming before her eyes. One evening, as the 6-month mark approached, David found Serena sitting by the fireplace, lost in thought. "Serena," he began, his voice softer than usual. "I know I've hurt people. And I know I've hurt you, even if I don't fully understand how. But I want to change. Not because of a bet, but because I need to be better." Serena looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of skepticism and hope. "Change isn't easy, David. And it doesn't happen overnight." "I know," he said. "But I'm willing to try. If there's any chance of earning your forgiveness, I'll take it." The 6 months ended, but David and Serena's story didn't. They began to build something real, something neither of them had anticipated. For David, Serena became more than a challenge, she became his partner. And for Serena, David was no longer the man who had destroyed her family but someone willing to confront his past and create a better future. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And for both of them, that was enough. As the 6 months officially came to an end, David found himself uncharacteristically nervous. He stood in the living room of his penthouse, pacing back and forth as the weight of the moment pressed on him. The bet was over, technically, he had won. But the thought of Serena walking out of his life made the victory feel hollow. Across the room, Serena stood by the large floor-to-ceiling windows, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. The city stretched out before her, lights glittering like a sea of stars. She had packed her things earlier that day, though it wasn't much. Serena had always refused to indulge in David's wealth or extravagance. To her, this marriage had been temporary from the start, and she had never allowed herself to grow too comfortable. "Are you ready to leave?" David asked finally, his voice softer than usual. Serena turned to face him, her expression calm but unreadable. "I am," she said simply. David hesitated. He had spent the last 6 months learning to confront his mistakes, to become a better man, but in this moment, he felt utterly lost. "Serena, wait," he said, his voice almost pleading. "Before you go, I need to tell you something." Serena crossed her arms, her posture steady and resolute. "Go ahead." David took a deep breath. "When this started, it was just a bet to me. A game. I thought I could charm my way through it like I always do. But you changed me. You forced me to look at myself in ways I never had before. You made me realize how empty my life was, and I'll never be able to thank you enough for that." Serena's gaze softened, but she remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "I know I've hurt people, and I know I've hurt you," David said, his voice breaking slightly. "But I don't want to lose you, Serena. Not now, not ever. If you walk out that door, I'll respect your decision, but I need you to know that I love you. And it's not because of the bet or the challenge, it's because of who you are. Strong, intelligent, fearless. You make me want to be better, not for anyone else, but for myself." Serena blinked, her composure faltering for the first time. She had prepared herself to leave, to move on without looking back, but David's words hit her harder than she had expected. "David," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't come into this marriage expecting anything from you. In fact, I resented you for what you did to my family. But over these past months, I've seen a side of you I didn't think existed. You've changed in ways I didn't think were possible." She paused, searching for the right words. "But love isn't just about saying the right things. It's about actions, about showing up even when it's hard. You've made progress, but there's still a long way to go." David nodded, his gaze steady. "I know. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Even if it means giving you the space you need. I'll wait for you, Serena. However long it takes." Serena looked at him, her heart torn. She had always prided herself on her independence, on never relying on anyone else. But David's sincerity was undeniable, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to consider the possibility of letting someone in. "I can't promise anything," she said finally. "But I'm willing to see where this goes." A smile broke across David's face, one of genuine relief and hope. "That's all I ask." Over the following months, David and Serena began to rebuild their relationship, not as a contractual obligation, but as two people navigating uncharted territory. David continued his efforts to repair the damage he had caused in the past. He launched a charitable foundation in Serena's father's name, dedicated